Gaze upon the gold-plated face of perfection, you terrestrial pedestrians, for the Silver Age is here, the greatest thing to happen to professional wrestling since Isaac Yankem DDS, and yes, there have been a few bumps in the road getting me here. But after months of humiliation and degradation in the professional wrestling business, I have been reborn. And I am born perfect. And now, the Star Eater, the Super Heavyweight Supervillain, Sterling, has arrived to ruin professional wrestling, just as my terrestrial alter ego James ruined video games for you. Sorry about that. I know some of you enjoy professional wrestling, but I've come to wreck it. Speaking of wrecking things, let us go and destroy G2A together, shall we? Yes. Oh my, yes.
Should a game industry organisation ever epitomise the phrase, if you had a brain you'd be dangerous, then let that organisation be G2A. For those unaware, G2A is a shady grey market that specialises in game activation keys for every major PC digital storefront, including Steam, Good Old Games and bespoke publisher stores such as EA's Origin. Basically, if you end up with a key to unlock a game on these stores, you're free to use G2A to sell that key directly to other users. This has resulted in a marketplace with wildly deep discounts as games sell for peanuts. Unfortunately, this has also resulted in a marketplace with a long and sordid history of untrustworthy sellers, fraudulent sales, and the routine screwing over of independent developers. And as I suggested a moment ago, G2A is an astonishingly stupid company. Like, it's amazing in its idiocy. Its ineptitude is pretty much its only saving grace because it's destructive enough without displaying a single shred of competency. G2A has become notorious in certain circles of the game industry for its lack of accountability, since pretty much anyone can sell keys, and because G2A performs so little vetting of its users, basically rather weak and rather recent identity checks, fraudulently obtained keys have been an issue with notably damaging consequences. The typical way in which this manifests is that G2A is used by credit card thieves to essentially launder money, using a stolen card to buy keys from a storefront like Steam, then selling those keys on G2A. This allows them to make money from the stolen card without directly implicating themselves. Of course, once the credit card's reported as stolen, the money has to be refunded, but by that time the fraudsters made their cash without personal risk, and it's often the game developer that feels the sting. For years, G2A has defended itself from accusations of dodginess in a rather dismissive, churlish, sometimes insulting manner. In recent weeks, however, the company has completely shown its ass, publishing a lengthy screed in which it says fraud isn't a problem, which they followed up with on Twitter by saying the fraud problem won't go away. Then a representative of the company started hitting up games journalists to ask them to publish exonerating puff pieces written by G2A itself, without labelling them as sponsored or associated with G2A in any way. Yes, you heard that right. A G2A rep was caught contacting the press to request sponsored content masquerading as non-sponsored content. This blew up in the company's face pretty much instantly because of course it would. We shall dig into all the juicy details, but first, let's look at G2A's stunning reputation in the game industry. A significant number of indie developers have commented on how G2A has cost them money, and we're not even talking about lost sales. When the credit card purchases are refunded, the developers foot the bill for the chargeback fees. So not only do they get no money for fraudulent sales, sales, they actively have to pay extra for those fraudulent sales. On top of that, it's the developer that has to deal with any keys that might not work and run tech support for companies of games they saw zero benefit from. G2A essentially wastes both money and time for studios. Major AAA publishers roll around in so much cash, they don't feel so much as a pinch from this, but for smaller studios who pretty much need every penny their games can muster, it's proven to be brutal. Most notoriously, Tiny Build claimed $450,000 worth of games were sold via G2A without the game makers seeing one thin dime. Over 26,000 keys for Tiny Build's games were sold on G2A without any clear indication of where those keys came from. G2A's response was to blame Tiny Build's own distribution partners, responding with, "I think you will be surprised in that it is not fraud, but your resale partners doing what they do best, selling keys. They just happen to be selling them on G2A." They were essentially claiming that Tiny Build's very own distributors were scamming them by pocketing cash they made off G2A. Certainly a bold claim, but one the marketplace used as an excuse to offer zero compensation on the hundreds of thousands of lost dollars. Tiny Build labelled G2A a fraud-fueled economy, and it's hard to disagree when so much money goes missing via suspiciously discounted deals made with no clear point of origin. Recently, a number of independent developers promoted Piracy over G2A. Not that they want their games pirated, of course, it's just that they choose it over anyone purchasing the game via G2A's shady market. Please, if you're going to buy a game from G2A, just pirate it instead. Genuinely, urged No More Robots' Mike Rose. Devs don't see a penny either way, so we'd much rather G2A didn't see any money either. The founder of Blazing Bit Games stated, "If you don't want to buy it full price, please pirate Nightmare Reaper when it comes out instead of getting it on G2A. If you can't afford or don't want to buy our games full price, please pirate them rather than buying them from a key reseller," requested Philampia's Rami Ishmael. "These sites cost us so much potential dev time in customer service, investigating fake key requests, figuring out credit card chargebacks, and more." And here's another one for good measure. "Please do not buy another star from a third-party reseller. Those are stolen codes, I don't see a penny from them. At least have the dignity to pirate the game instead if you're going to shortchange me." These are just a handful of the comments made about the grey marketplace in recent weeks, and the run-through message is clear. G2A is literally worse than piracy. I don't think I've spoken to or seen secondhand a single independent game developer that actually likes, respects, or so much as tolerates G2A. It's hated, despised, detested, and derided, and G2A is itself a bunch of major league arseholes by all accounts. They insist that keys sell so cheaply on their marketplace because they're all bought wholesale by legitimate distributors who get their own discounts by bulk purchasing. They alternatively claim the keys are given away for free in their thousands by developers themselves, and this all might be true in many cases, but clearly not the ones where devs are literally clueless as to where the cheap bloody keys came from. The aforementioned Mike Rose, who has been going gloriously apeshit on G2A recently, demonstrated how the No More Robots published game Descenders has been scammed with G2A's facilitation. In short, Steam keys for Descenders are not actually being sold. Users buying Descenders via G2A have reported that instead of getting a direct key for the game, they're instead offered a shady link to a third-party site that gives them a Steam gift, a copy of the game with no verifiable source. Rose alleges this is all being done en masse via bots. Some sellers are using bots to set up Steam accounts, he explains, buy games in cheaper countries, sell those keys using dodgy third-party websites outside of Steam, and then cancelling the payment afterwards so the dev gets hit. All of this is against Steam's terms of service. They use dodgy third-party sites to navigate around Steam and use back-end loopholes that Valve is constantly trying to shut down, but more just keep popping up. G2A's main method of response to all this has been to say it operates no differently from third-party marketplaces such as eBay or Amazon, that most keys are perfectly legal, and that indie games only make up 8% of G2A sales anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. They also keep reiterating that developers should work with them, contact them directly, but Rose and others allege they've been ignored in the past whenever they've tried. In a long blog post where it boastingly offered to pay developers 10 times the amount of money proven to be lost lost on chargebacks resulting from fraud, the organisation also said the developers criticising them are just seeking attention. The developers who posted tweets over this past week haven't tried to solve the problem together with G2A. That's why we can assume the reason they wrote those posts was to gain media attention. Unfortunately for G2A, they were incredibly successful. Their tweets caused an avalanche of articles. Rose, for his part, says he did try to solve the problem with G2A but got nowhere. The organisation says only 8% of its sales are indie titles and that only a small number of people complain about them, which has prompted a petition to be signed in its thousands asking G2A to stop selling indie titles outright. After all, if it's such a tiny insignificant part of their business model, they can easily do away with it, right? Like they say, it's no big deal. G2A fired back by saying if they stopped selling indie games, another reseller would just fill the gap in the market, so oh well, why bother trying to be ethical, I guess. Nature abhors a vacuum, they said on Twitter. Sellers would move to the next platforms, there's like 20 of them, and then to eBay and other marketplaces. ... Do you think that if G2A closed down tomorrow, the problem would be non-existent within a month? Well, nice to know G2A admits that the problem they claim to not be a problem is a problem that won't stop being a problem even if they stopped being the problem. G2A has never taken its critics seriously. I know we're called a grey marketplace, but the way we see it and the way our team sees it is that there's nothing really grey about it, offered senior account manager Mario Mirek in 2017. People just don't understand our business model. Whenever G2A has tried to defend itself, it's come off as smug, condescending, and wholly uncaring of the potential damage fraud does. The company outright denies that significant scale fraud is even achievable, stating that obtaining a stolen credit card is quite impossible to do for an average Joe, and that it takes too long to sell indie games on G2A for stolen keys to be offloaded before the theft's reported. As a thief, your goal is to cash out the money on stolen credit cards as soon as possible before they get blocked. If you got, say, $5,000 to cash out, you'd have to buy 250 copies of said indie game for $20 each. Considering average indie sales statistics, it'd take you about 2 to 3 months to sell them on G2A. Doesn't seem like ASAP at all. But these defences just don't square up with the experiences of the studios impacted. Fact of the matter is, a company like No More Robots is seeing copies of its games sold for peanuts with no clue as to how or where those copies were obtained. No More Robots doesn't give them out, and is more than a little concerned that one single seller is selling 45% of its games on G2A, having acquired so many cheap or free keys from a publisher that literally doesn't give out cheap or free keys. But anyway, let's get to the really fun part, the part where G2A saw its credibility tank in minutes with the most hilariously absurd PR own goal I've seen since EA's legal VP let surprise mechanics tumble out of their mouth. We have written an unbiased article about how selling stolen keys on gaming marketplaces is pretty much impossible, and we want to publish it on your website without being marked as sponsored or marked as associated with G2A, said an official G2A email that was sent to multiple Games Press websites. It is a transparent and just review of the problem of the stolen keys reselling. Thomas Faust shared the email on Twitter, ironically not taking a Faustian deal, which is pretty much what most journalists would immediately do because the story of G2A being as dishonest as it is stupid is far more valuable than any sponsorship deal with G2A itself could be. Here we have a G2A representative attempting to violate the law by hiding the sponsored nature of an article, implicating itself in what almost, dare I say it, almost looks like fraud. Oh, no. After this email went public and the organisation was drowned in bellowing laughter, G2A did pretty much the only thing it could do to save face. It said the PR person who sent the email went rogue. These emails were sent by our employee without authorization, for which we apologise to Indie Game Plus and the 9 other media outlets he sent this proposal to. He will face strict consequences, as this is absolutely unacceptable. Now, I'm not going to say G2A is lying. I've faced enough spurious lawsuits for one lifetime. I'd never say that G2A is lying when it claims someone with the authority to speak to press on behalf of G2A was able to contact 10 press outlets, bearing a pre-written article echoing G2A's previously published statements, without anyone else in the company knowing or greenlighting it. I'd never say they were lying about that. However, It would be an ethical dereliction of duty for me to not honestly and frankly say that I do not bloody believe them. That an email from an official rep would contact that many outlets without any oversight whatsoever, to the point where G2A as a company found out about it after the email made its way to Twitter. And if I did believe it, I'd have to also believe that G2A is so utterly frigging stupid that it allows morons to speak on its behalf sight unseen, although as I say that out loud, that is somewhat believable. But what kind of person would this be? Someone so, I guess, in love with their employer that they'll write unprompted defensive tracts and offer to pay games media to publish it? Where would the money to sponsor these posts come from? This zealously loyal rogue agent's own pocket? Because I don't know how else they could offer compensation without G2A knowing about it, and G2A's totally opaque description of strict consequences doesn't exactly inspire faith. I mean, if an employee of mine attempted to break the law, to say nothing of how destructive to my reputation they'd been, I'd fire them at the very least and let everyone know about it. Was this maverick G2A lover fired? One imagines they'd have said. Oh, and they've not been responding to press for further comment on this matter. In one last face-saving move, however, made actually just as I'm recording this, G2A has finally admitted that its attempts at gaining good publicity for itself have been short-sighted, and has proposed a key blocker tool that would allow developers to have a measure of control over the games being resold on G2A. G2A wants 100 developers to sign off on it, once again trying to create this idea that developers should work with them, which more and more looks like a transparent attempt for them to get good optics, a sense of legitimacy by having studios work with them. You'd have to get verified by G2A, and once you are, you will be able to block the sale of keys on the... I mean, it's called a key blocker, that it's self-explanatory, innit? G2A made sure to lament how time-consuming and expensive it's going to be to build this tool and its algorithm, and needs 100 developers expressing interest within a month. Time will tell if this is an actual effective tool, if this is something that actually works in favour of developers, or if it is what I unfortunately suspect it is, something G2A crapped out of its mouth to get everyone to shut up right now and hopefully forget about it later. In any case, it may be too little too late. For years, G2A has simply belonged in the gutter. The credible criticism of its furtive practices has insurmountably grown over the years, and all the company's bothered to offer before now is weak deflection and cries of, well, other marketplaces exist so we're not that bad, or you just don't understand us, man. Meanwhile, it continues to make idiotic statements on Twitter that come close to matching the idiocy of whoever sent that absurdly unethical email, compounding the belief, no, the fact, that G2A is as pathetically imbecilic as it is unscrupulous. Anyway, support indie games, please, if you are so inclined. There's some good ones out there. Have you seen Time Spinner? That's a cute little Metroidvania. Dig Dog? Or was it Dog Dig? I think it's Dig Dog. It's not Dig Dug, though. Dig, like dog, woof woof. That one's pretty cheap and quite a laugh. They're good, indie games. They're not live service trash anyway. Oh, bloody hell. And because this story never ends, here's another little bit for you. Factorio's developers have said they've got issues with G2A and are actually going to take the company up on its offer to repay all fraud-based credit card chargebacks times 10. They say they had a ton of chargeback and fraud issues in 2016, with over 300 Steam keys being bought with stolen credit cards. They believe they have paid $6,600 in chargebacks and have contacted G2A to, well, get that fucking money back and then some. G2A so far doesn't seem to have responded, but, well, it's going to be interesting to see if they do and how they do. We will find out if that was just an overconfident boast on G2A's part, something they didn't think anyone would actually be able to call them out on, or if they actually are as good as their slimy word. Time will tell.
Attention, you mediocre nobodies! The Sterling One is coming to a town near you if you are in one of two towns. Oh yes, oh my, yes. On July 19th, Sterling comes to Alabama for Pro South Wrestling in Piedmont. And then on August 3rd, I'm coming to Pittsburgh for Rise Pro Wrestling at the Stronghold Arena. Come, marvel, be grateful and be mesmerized by the glory of the Super Heavyweight Supervillain. Or don't. if you don't want to. I mean, screw you if you don't want to take this seriously. Do I not look like someone who's dressed to be taken seriously? This is all very serious indeed. And in time, with a little persuasion and many displays of my mayhemic majesty, you will all thank the stars for me. Sod G2A though. They're rubbish. Rubbish!